Good Saturday morning. I'm Matt,
And I'm
and we're welcoming you into this week at the movies a little bit earlier. We are very excited. We're gonna kind of move to an earlier time, and to kick that off this fall, we won't say his name three times, but Beetlejuice is back in another Beetlejuice film.
Mm.
Eric, it has been over 30 years. It is hard to believe since the last Beetlejuice movie, 36 years. And we get a return to the world with a lot of the primary cast. No Gina
Yep.
Davis, no Alec Baldwin. Some people wondering why they couldn't be in there. I will say that's like the most obvious writing them out in the world because it's been 36 years and their characters were dead, so they
Ghosts.
should not have been aging.
Hmm.
And it would be darn near impossible to.
I mean, well, they do the de-aging thing all the time, but this movie doesn't seem to want to do a bunch of digital,
No.
like make it in post stuff. So, mm,
But we get Tim Burton back as the director. We get Winona Ryder, Catherine O'Hara. We get, of course, Michael Keaton. And they add to that Jenna Ortega, who I thought was pretty fun here. Um, Justin Theroux,
yep.
who had a weird, kind of fun part. You get Monica Bellucci, Willem Dafoe, Danny DeVito kind of joining in the fun. A lot of kind of fun. If you are a fan, I would say, of Tim Burton movies in general, this will probably be right in your wheelhouse. This feels like a nice return to the kind of Tim Burton films that made us fall in love with Tim Burton and maybe moving away from recent films that didn't quite hit. That Dark Shadows reboot did not quite work. Dumbo, which also had Michael Keaton, he has mentioned he felt like he let him down. I think there was a lot of blame to pass around in a movie that did not quite work. But this feels like a good kind of classic return. Beetlejuice originally came out in 1988. Was a lot of fun. Now 2024, it's been 36 years. Getting kind of a return to the world. In the new film, Lydia Dietz, played by Winona Ryder, is now a famous medium of some repute. Who is plying her craft. She's become pretty famous and pretty wealthy with her using her ability to see the dead. Catherine O'Hara's stepmother character, Delia, also has become somewhat famous as a performance artist. And they connect early on as she lets Lydia know that her father has died. And that leads us to a claymation sequence, which is great because the original actor who played her father, Jeffrey Jones, has passed away. So obviously wasn't available, but kind of a nice tribute to him, kind of a fun slapstick scene. But they need to come together for his funeral. So they head back to the house from the original film. They pick up her daughter, who she's somewhat estranged from along the way, played by Jenna Ortega. She's also having a little bit of a hard time because she keeps thinking she sees flashes of Beetlejuice flash to the underworld, and he is actually sending little visions of himself because he's still hung up on the one that got away a few years ago, trying to find a way to get back to her. Meanwhile, his own former flame manages to put herself back together and is on the hunt for him. So, a lot of things going on here leading up to a series of events that takes place on Halloween itself. That's pretty fun. Kind of a wild and crazy plot. I didn't know what to expect. Um, I like the original film. I wouldn't say it's one of my personal favorites when we look at favorite Tim Burton films. I enjoy it, but it's probably not top five Tim Burton for me either. I wasn't sure. There was some mixed reviews early on. Some people really loved it, loved the nostalgia. Some people did not like it. I think if you like Tim Burton and you like Tim Burton's style, movies that speak to you, you will probably feel a little bit different about this, especially if you enjoyed the original. I liked what they were doing here. I thought the humor was a lot of fun. Even though Beetlejuice is the name of the movie, if you think about the original, Michael Keaton is more of a supporting uh, character. I feel like he had a much bigger role here, a lot more back and forth with Winona Ryder that was kind of fun here. I liked the addition of Jenna Ortega, the way they found a way to bring the story to life, some of the sight gags, the visual gags, and the things. I'm giving this a solid thumbs up. I actually like this a little bit more, I think, than even the original.
Okay, there's 3 movies in here. There's 3 short movies, and they barely intersect. It's almost like they overlap at the end because someone said, no, these have to overlap at the end. They have to come to a conclusion. And someone was like, all right. And so they came up with a way to connect Monica Bellucci coming for Beetlejuice and Willem Dafoe as an actor who fully plays the police officer he portrayed in movies in the afterlife, trying to help connect the case of her leaving a trail of undead husks. And that's one movie. Then you have Jenna Ortega, who doesn't believe in her mom, misses her dad, finds comfort in a new relationship with a boy, and that takes her to the underworld and deals with her dad, and that's a whole other movie. Then you have Catherine O'Hara. Charles passed away, and you have Lydia being haunted by Beetlejuice and wanting to escape a contract with that, but then she's worried about her daughter and all that kind of stuff. And normally you would just say, oh, that's a lot going on in a movie, but they keep these plot lines so distinct and separate from one another until very far in that it comes across to me as more of just an episodic sequence of set pieces. And I enjoyed most of those set pieces. Like, here we are dealing with I liked every time Monica Bellucci was on screen. I wish she had maybe done more. I liked every time Willem Dafoe was on screen, and him and the police arrival during a dance and song number towards the end. Like, it was so much fun. Michael Keaton was great as Beetlejuice across the board. There are some images in this movie, like him with these massive bug eyes, that I will not be able to get out of my head for a long time. That like creeped me out, and like in a very good way. The only plot thread, I forgot, Lydia Dietz's plot thread is also she's going to get married to Justin Theroux, and that I think I forgot about because that to me is like maybe the weakest part. I feel like the character with Justin Theroux, they set him up and her up in a relationship in a certain way, and then he forces a proposal on her at what felt to me like a bizarre time. I didn't quite catch why he thought like now is the time.
I think he just was looking to make it more about him. Also, one correction, I did look it up. Jeffrey Jones did not pass away. I forgot. He
a pedophile.
Yeah. I get him confused. But, yeah, so
eat him,
I remember there was a reason he wasn't available.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm so bummed because I learned that around this movie, and so now it's like, Ferris Bueller's Day Off. Oh, come on.
Yeah. But you're right. Having him get eaten by a shark is pretty good.
Yeah, and the character is in the movie.
Yeah.
But it's just like, I don't know. It's interesting what they do with it. And I 100% agree, by the way. Like, that's gotta be the thing. Is like they're ghosts. They wouldn't be aging if we brought the characters back to do the characters and we wrote them in. Not only would that be like more plot than the story they already had, but then it would be like so much work to digitally de-age them or do whatever they were going to do for Alec Baldwin and Gina Davis. Yeah, I don't want to ruin some of the set pieces that people have, but it's just bonkers and fun constantly without real concern for making sure the movie's like divided into acts that lead up in like a solid story. And I like some of the twists and turns, and every once in a while, I do think I got the feeling of being like, okay, we're sitting with this for a really long time. There's other stuff going on. What are we doing here? And then something really bizarre and fun will happen, and then I'm grinning, and it just moves on. And the movie was like a tight hour and 45 minutes,
Yeah.
and each of the plot threads is so kind of streamed down. I can't imagine if they had just narrowed it down to one and then fleshed that out. And I can't imagine them trying to bloat it to make like Monica Bellucci's narrative more satisfying or anything.
I mean, I
think
thought
it's
that
kind
was
of
pretty good backstory, kind of giving backstory to Beetlejuice.
Oh yeah.
Because
That sequence where he just starts
in Spanish.
speaking in Spanish.
Well, and this is kind of a return to a sort of filmmaking group almost that they used before, because Alfred Go and Miles Millar are the screenwriters here, and they had worked on stories and stuff with him before, I believe, and they've done some other interesting stuff. They did actually the Spider-Man movies with Sam Raimi. And had worked on like Smallville and some other things. So I thought that was interesting, a little bit of a different, approach. I thought there was maybe a little more humor and stuff in there. Not that there wasn't humor in the first one, but I liked the way this one kind of was put together. These are guys who are used to working on some sequels. They worked on Lethal Weapon 4. They worked on, things like Shanghai Nights. One of the Mummy movies. So I think I thought the script and everything worked pretty well, and it seemed like Tim Burton was back to having fun with things. It seemed like the cast is having fun with things. Some of the musical choices made me laugh hysterically too. Just the way they were putting everything together. It's weird to say like a movie about the underworld and a lot of death is lighthearted, but it does feel kind of lighthearted in its approach.
Yes, it does. Yeah, I figure I've given it definitely a solid thumb up. I honestly think it might even be favorable, like even more on a rewatch.
Yeah.
Like because it's definitely going to be a different experience not knowing where the movie is going versus knowing where the movie is going. So I'm kind of curious. But yeah, everything from Beetlejuice Baby to Soul Train to just like genuinely creepy moments of like, oh no, these people are dead the whole time. Like I like the movie's sense of humor. I like its sense of horror.
Delia's ultimate fate made me laugh too. I mean, you knew from the moment they show up. Get my refund.
Yeah.
And just
Jenna Ortega is like, your art is gonna go up in value like a lot now. Like, oh yeah, like helps her.
Okay. Yeah, and some of the twists that make it fun, and the things they're going through. I wasn't sure I needed or wanted a return to this world, but getting to see it, I thought it was good. I know people are talking about, well, they'll keep making more of these. Maybe I don't think they need to.
Yeah.
But it certainly was a lot of fun. If they're going to, they better get on it, because Michael Keaton, even though he looks pretty good and was recently Batman, I'm pretty sure he's 70. Might be more than 70. You wouldn't know from watching his performances, but he's 1951, so he's 73.
Yeah.
It was actually his birthday on Thursday.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So Yeah, so he looks pretty good, but there's a lot of physical, comedy and activities here.
Yep.
But it was fun. I definitely enjoyed this one. I mentioned Tim Burton. If you are a fan of Tim Burton and his catalog, this probably will play pretty well for you. Before we get out of here, I thought it might be fun for us to talk about maybe some of our previous favorite Tim Burton movies. And uh,
Mhm.
I know Charlie and the Chocolate Factory has got to be number one in your heart. This grouping. But why don't you give us what are your top five favorite Tim Burton?
See, I'm curious about yours, but I'm gonna go ahead and say, without really looking at all of them and trying to rank them, I'm going to say that uh, they're Ed Wood, Edward Scissorhands, Sweeney Todd, Sleepy Hollow, Batman Returns. So I don't know the particular order of those, but I know Ed Wood is way up there towards the top. And Sleepy Hollow has a really soft place in my heart for a particular reason. It was this movie that my aunt always teased as a kid because she saw it and she was blindsided. She really liked it, and she was introduced to Johnny Depp and all this other stuff, and so that's a whole thing, a whole event. And now I can't remember. Also, did he? Because he didn't direct Nightmare Before Christmas. He produced it. But
He's a producer, yeah.
Did he direct Corpse Bride?
I believe so, because that was actually on his. Yes, he did.
Yeah. Okay, then I'm including Corpse Bride. Yeah.
So mine maybe a little more unconventional, I guess, because you probably do think of some of the
Oh no, not Corpse
more
Bride.
zany and wild worlds that you've called out, like a Sweeney Todd or a, Sleepy Hollow. That is probably, but for me, I guess number five for me would be Batman Returns, which is a fun Christmas movie, by the way. I will defend uh, that for being a Christmas movie. A good pairing with Michael Keaton. I love Michelle Pfeiffer as Catwoman. Christopher Walken's great in that. Danny DeVito, um, as the Penguin. They did some definitely very different kind of things. Building that movie up. Some people complain that Batman feels more like a supporting player in that movie. I guess, but I had fun with that one. That was probably more of a Tim Burtonish film than maybe even the first one, where they were kind of setting the stage. Number four for me is Edward Scissorhands. Johnny Depp's very good in that. So is Winona Ryder. Very creative, a different kind of film, a different kind of world, bringing it in. And that was actually one of his earlier films, if I recall.
Yeah.
1990 was kind of in between the Batman movies. After he had done Beetlejuice, I just I liked the
Mhm.
style. I liked a lot of his early movies. I did not include it, but I actually do enjoy Pee-wee's Big Adventure. There are some
Mm.
lines in there that always make me laugh, and I think that's why they had Paul Rubens in Batman Returns as the Penguin's father. Number three for me, this is probably, I know you do not care for this movie, but I liked his version of Alice in Wonderland, at least the first one. The second movie, I'm not a big fan of, but there are ways that the world is brought together and the use of color, but there are story and ideas in there that really speak to me that I enjoyed quite a bit. Not so. I think a lot of people, when they think about that movie, think about Johnny Depp as the Mad Hatter and that shtick.
Right.
That was not the part necessarily that totally appeals to me. I actually like Dan Hathaway's character better, and the journey from Mia Wasilowski. I'm not sure if
Yeah.
I'm pronouncing that as
Right.
Alice, and kind of the larger ideas, finding yourself, and there are some things in there that really speak to me, which leads me to my second favorite Tim Burton movie of all time is Big Fish, which is probably not one people typically think of as him. And I get it; it's probably not his maybe typical movie. It feels like in some ways a more conventional story, but it's really kind of a wild story. I enjoyed the book, which was written by John August, and I really like the father and son element. Kind of the journey that you go on with Billy Crudup's character. I like the flashback sequences with Ewan McGregor and the idea of his dad telling this kind of whopper of a story of his life and some of the creative worlds. But that is one, I tend to be drawn personally probably to a few more emotional kind of things, and that one had some big emotions. I remember seeing it in the theater. I remember reading the book, and that one's always been kind of a personal favorite. And then number one for me, I was 9 years old when I saw Batman. It was a entry into the world of comic books. Batman has always been my most favorite superhero, and I always most excited and most nervous about productions, like even with the new one, the Batman. I was horrified by their choice of Bruce Wayne, and I was incredibly on edge going to it. I ended up liking the way they put the production together, but that original Batman 1989, there are a lot of things that will always stand out to me for that. It is one of my favorite movies of all time. Michael Keaton is actually my favorite actor to have ever played Batman. He is Batman to me, probably always will be. But, there are a few films that I remember from, formative times when I was growing up. Jaws, that's, that was one of the first big blockbusters I always saw. It's always stuck out to me. I was 12 when I saw Jurassic Park. I remember going to the theater. I remember that sense of wonder. Batman is a little bit like that. I remember when I first saw it, and growing up, I had missed, fortunately, the wave of Superman movies, because after the first two, they really weren't great. But Batman was kind of the first like superhero comic book movie I remember seeing, and I loved the world, the music, just being transported into that. So that has always been a personal favorite, and is obviously my favorite of Burton's movies.
Cool.
Any other thoughts about the canon of Tim Burton?
He is a mixed career. There are ups and downs, safe movies, bizarre movies. I think he's someone who is so distinctly branded that sometimes in his life he has wanted to do conventional things, and people are almost up in arms when he doesn't want to, speak for the outcast or do different things. But I think in general, he has enough, I don't know if it's clout or what, that when he makes something, it's going to be what he wanted to make. And those kinds of projects always get me more excited than when I think, let's say like you hear that a Marvel movie about a particular character is coming, and I'm very excited for it. I'm excited for the character, and then if they attach a great director to it, I'm excited for that too. Tim Burton is one of those people that I'm like, okay, who knows how I'm going to feel about this movie, but it's not going to be just the safe, expected structure of a movie for sure. And then it'll happen to have flares of the director, like Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. And so I don't know. He has his name for a reason. And I like that.
Yeah. And he hasn't made a feature film since Dumbo in 2019. He is obviously works on the TV series and is a director for Wednesday, which is kind of how he connected with Jenna Ortega. A second season of that is supposed to be coming out in, I believe, 2025. I think
Pretty
is
sure.
when they're aiming for that. So that'll be something to look forward to. But he hasn't after kind of a he had a string of movies that maybe weren't as well received. In 12 he did Frankenweenie, which I thought was somewhat clever, and Dark Shadows, which people probably had mixed feelings about. Then did Big Eyes in 2014, which was an interesting idea that
Right.
doesn't totally land.
And nobody saw that.
Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children in 2016, and then Dumbo in 2019, and really didn't do anything until kind of being a director and producer on Wednesday. That the first season came out in 2022, and then now working on and doing Beetlejuice. So, we got to appreciate the movies when we get them. He's probably in that phase where he may not be turning out that many more. He's not much younger than Michael Keaton. So,
Right.
I like this. If I thought this was a fun return to form after a couple movies that were maybe decentish ideas that didn't come together. This was a lot of fun. Felt like a return to some classic 80s, early 90s Tim Burton that made us kind of fall in love with his style. And if you've been a fan for a long time, I think this is going to be right up your alley. If you're just looking for something weird and fun for this spooky season, it's going to be right up your alley. I think the people I've seen that haven't enjoyed it were probably not predisposed to either of those two things.
Right.
And if you aren't, it's definitely weird. And it is definitely unconventional. So weird and unconventional. That works for Eric and I, both personally and professionally. So hope you guys have a wonderful weekend. It is now early enough on Saturday morning. Hopefully this helps you make your choice. You can roll out and catch Beetlejuice, and you can catch us coming back to you on Saturday mornings this fall. Should be a lot of fun. Get your film recommendations in there before you mow the lawn and head out for college football. So until next time, we will see you guys at the movies.